Imagine your child torn from your arms, sold to a man you've never seen, never to be held again. Imagine living every single day in fear, knowing that at any moment, your family, your life, your very soul, could be ripped away. This was the reality for millions of enslaved Africans. Stripped of their humanity, their identity, their hope. And one man, Mease Butler, not only thrived in this system but used it to line his pockets in the most brutal, deceitful ways. Slavery in America was not just a system, it was a business. A business where human beings were reduced to property, valued only by the strength of their arms or the fertility of their wombs. Families were ripped apart, men sold to the highest bidder, women brutalized, and children born into a life of servitude, their futures predetermined by nothing more than the color of their skin. The enslaved were sold as goods, livestock, in fact. Inspected, priced, and bartered like cattle. But these were people, real people with dreams and families. They were subjected to inhumane treatment. Their bodies were battered by the whip, their spirits crushed by endless days of hard labor in the heat of the southern plantations. No one represented this cruelty better than Mease Butler. Mease Butler was born in 1807 into one of America's wealthiest and most powerful families. His grandfather, Major Mease Butler, was an influential figure in the founding of the United States, even serving as one of the authors of the U.S. Constitution. With this legacy, Mease Butler inherited an empire of plantations and along with it, the lives of hundreds of enslaved people. But Pierce was not just a passive slave owner. He actively exploited the system in some of the most despicable ways imaginable. After inheriting his fortune, he squandered it through reckless spending and gambling. But when faced with financial ruin, he didn't change his ways. Instead, Butler turned to the very people who toiled for him, the enslaved men, women, and children on his plantations, using them to rebuild his wealth in the most devastating way. In 1859, Mease Butler made the horrific decision to sell over 400 enslaved people in what would become known as the Weeping Time. Families were torn apart. Mothers were sold away from their children, never to see them again. Husbands and wives were separated, their love rendered meaningless in the face of cold, hard cash. The rain fell during the two-day event, as if the heavens themselves were weeping for the souls being sold like mere objects. It was the largest sale of human beings in U.S. history. Yet for Mease Butler, it was just business, a transaction to clear his debts and maintain his luxurious lifestyle. The cries and screams of the enslaved meant nothing to him. But the cruelty of Mease Butler didn't stop with that auction. His plantations were sites of unspeakable abuse. The slaves on his property were beaten into submission, worked to the brink of death, and denied even the most basic forms of dignity. Butler saw them not as people, but as tools to be used, exploited, and discarded at his will. One of the most sinister aspects of Mease Butler's life was his willingness to deceive the very people he enslaved. There are stories of him tricking slaves, promising them freedom if they could escape their original masters and hide on his land. But it was all a cruel trap. Once they had fled to him, Butler would betray them, selling them back to their previous owners or even to new masters, profiting from their desperation and false hope. As the years went by, Butler's wealth dwindled once again. His lavish spending and financial mismanagement left him entangled in lawsuits and deep in debt. But despite his fall from grace, the pain he inflicted on hundreds of lives, on generations of families, would never be forgotten. Mease Butler's legacy is not one of honor, but of betrayal, cruelty, and exploitation. Slavery was not just a tragedy of individuals like Mease Butler, it was a tragedy for an entire people. But his story reminds us of the lengths to which some men went to preserve their wealth and power, even at the cost of human suffering. Today, we remember those who were sold during the weeping time and all the enslaved men, women, and children who endured the horrors of slavery. We cannot change history, but we can remember it. We can honor those whose stories were buried beneath the weight of cruelty and oppression. Let us never forget the price of freedom, and the importance of fighting for it, even today. If you found value in this exploration of history, subscribe to our channel to continue uncovering these crucial stories. Share this video to raise awareness, and let's spark a conversation in the comments below. How can we ensure the stories of those who endured slavery are never forgotten? Together, we can honor their legacy and advocate for a more just future.